Hey everybody, Ramble time again. Those of you who have been following me online and all of my journeys, especially those of you who appreciate the rambles, are probably going to think this is one of my best videos ever, just because of the subject matter. And I'm sure I'm going to title this video with something that is not going to bury the lead here, but I'm making this video to recap all of my emotions that went into applying for a PhD program and getting denied. This is my first denial, and after a good long sulk, I realized that other people have applied to many a different program and gotten rejected from a lot. So this being my first, I should just, dust myself off and apply again to the same place or apply to other places, But I will begin this story from my perspective, way back in high school, which for me was decades ago, right? Psychology was my favorite course in high school. I went on to serve in the military for quite a number of years, and then when I got out, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, in its region, a prestigious school, very accredited, and I got a bachelor's degree in psychology alongside my other major of English. So I got a double major with that bachelor's degree. Then I had to work for a living, and I kept working as an electrician, electronics calibration technician, like the Army had taught me, for a few years after I got my bachelor's, because it's really hard to start over your career and live off of the wages of the bottom of the totem pole jobs. So it took me a while to transition over to starting my work experience within psychology. I found my foot in the door by moving in with my girlfriend at the time and finding jobs in Denver in addictions counseling. And I decided at that point that I would take the years that it took to get, at the time, what was called CAC 1, 2, and 3. One required 1,000 hours of supervision and a whole bunch of classes. 2 required 2,000 hours, which is, for those of you who don't know this, it's about 1 year of full-time work, right? And then CAC 3 required another 2,000 hours of full-time work. And I got all of those in succession knocked out so that I would be able to have the CAC 3 credential, which you can get with a bachelor's degree. So I was a certified addiction counselor 3 in the state of Colorado, which is now called CAS, certified addiction specialist. But at the time, it took me 5,000 hours of supervised work, which, when your supervisors quit at the jobs that you're at, it takes a little bit longer than the thousands of hours it took. It took a long time for me to get there. But I decided to do that first before I went to get my master's degree, because I wanted to be able to afford rent and putting food on the table before going to get a master's degree and put myself further into student loan debt, right? I wanted to be able to afford going to school. So that was a very big block of time where I was also getting an education and, on-the-job experience and having to take dozens of courses in addictions counseling, right? So then I went to my master's program, and the school I went to, I actually chose because I was driving to work every day to the detox downtown, and I was passing other universities. There's four in particular that I would have to literally drive past in order to get to work, and I decided to get my master's degree from a little university that was not in Denver. And the program was mostly online. You had to do intensives where you had to go there for a week at a time. And, basically they were sorting out who could actually do this work and who can't, who has the charisma, who has the presence, and who is just book smart and really can't really come off as professional in a counseling setting. So, even though most of the work was online, most universities now are mostly online because it's the post-COVID time. And so halfway through my master's program, COVID happened. And so I was well prepared for doing most of my work online in order to finish my degree because I started in a program that was mostly online. And when I graduated from my master's program, I decided that I was going to work the 2,000 hours over 2 years, which that's the requirement for getting a license. Now, as soon as I graduated, I was awarded licensed addiction counselor in the state of Colorado because I already put in all my time getting CAC 1, 2, and 3, and that counted towards my licensure. So I already had one license to practice in the state of Colorado. I took another 2 years in order to work and get more hours signed off to become a licensed professional counselor. So I'm an LPC and an LAC. I have 2 licenses to practice. And this is important in the rest of this story. Now, I also worked beyond when I got my LPC for about a year now, almost a year. So, about 2.5 years of post-grad experience as a therapist. And I'm making it on my own as a private practice therapist. Like, I've worked in agencies. I've worked in, ground zero of rock bottom. I've worked in all sorts of settings. I'm well versed in community mental health agencies as well as working on your own and dealing with insurance companies. So I feel like I have a lot of experience at this point. And I did always have the idea that I was not going to stop with just my master's degree. I just needed to take a break to get all the supervised hours in order to get my second license, which is more of a generalist license. A licensed addiction counselor has to treat addictions, whereas a LPC can treat just about anything, right? So I did that with the intent of going back into school and getting my PhD. And beyond. I plan on taking courses well after that, right? But around last November, it wasn't just a few of my clients, some of my friends, some of my colleagues, some of my cohort from when I went to my master's program. All of these people started having the anxiety of, I've applied to these places and now I can't wait to hear who accepts me. And so I was like, you know what? I have a plan too. And I need to get on it. Like, I could apply to a place. So I decided to apply to the same school where I got my master's degree. Now, I got a master's in counseling, education, and supervision. and they also offer a PhD in the very same thing. And I figured, with their website saying that they wait for people, it's weighted on their scoring for people who have actually gone into the profession and have at least 2 years of post-grad experience and a license. I figured that, that fits me. I went into the world, I got my license, and I know what it's like. I know how to do this work. I'm still in this work, right? I have 2 licenses. And not for nothing, at this institution, I had a 4.0 in my master's program. Now, nobody ever asks you what your GPA was. Excuse me. Forgot to turn my phone off while I'm filming this. So, where was I? I have a 4.0, right? For my master's degree. Nobody ever asks you about what your GPA was, but I worked hard at maintaining a 4.0 at this institution. So I figured that would count for something. And I wrote, as part of a letter to get into this institution, that I got a 4.0, that I had aspirations for what I was going to do with my PhD. There were prompts, like question prompts, 2 licenses. I'm a disabled vet, which, in some people's eyes, may be a negative as far as demographics wise, whereas I see it as, a niche that needs to be served, and half of my caseload is actually coming from referrals from the VA, through TriWest. And so I felt like I was a really good candidate for their program. I know half of the instructors because I went through this very same institution, right? So I applied, and that was back in November of 2023. And I learned that other people had not gotten in, and so I waited, and then I got word that I had been selected for an interview in February. And I was stoked. I prepared for that interview by taking off of work that week by just letting my caseload know that I was not going to be available to see them for an appointment that week. And for people who do this, it's expensive once you get in the business to take a week off of work. I'm basically a contractor. I don't get PTO. So if I don't work, I don't make money. So thankfully I didn't have to take off the whole week. And so I missed about $700 worth of work. Right? And before we had our in-person interviews, we were all required to write another essay on how our experience reflects with the values of a certain institution that has a value statement that wants more diversity, equity, and inclusion in counseling, right? And we were supposed to read this giant prompt on gatekeeping for a group interview during the process. Now, they required this small institution in a very small town, very far away from all large towns. And it took me 5 hours to drive there. They required that people go there and spend 2 days interviewing, right? And I have the entire itinerary in front of me. And I felt that on day one, things went really well. I arrived at my hotel. The most expensive hotel in Alamosa was $114 per night. So at the end, it was like $230 because I only spent 2 nights there. And so already we're at about $1,000 when you count gas money and having to eat on the road, and how much money that I've lost in seeing clients in order to go to this interview in person in this town, where like the entire program, most of it is online, but they want to do these interviews in person to make sure that you can, for whatever reason, show up in person. Right? It's part of the filter of who wants it and who doesn't, because when I showed up, there were 24 people and 30 people were invited. So off the top, 6 people just didn't even show up, right? And I looked as good as I can, right? I had a fresh haircut. I bought this sweater for day one of the interviews. This is a nice cardigan, and I've worn it since and gotten so many compliments, even like from the other interviewees and from just like waiters at bars and stuff. And so, yeah, this sweater, you can add that to the cost of me going there. Side note, on day one, there was a little break, and we all went out to this like breakfast bar that had like fruit and oatmeal and coffee. And I was in line with some of the other people, and the line kind of wrapped around to where the people who were getting food, we were standing right behind them. And there was this one lady that she was in her mid-20s, and she was gorgeous, but she had a white business shirt on, and underneath the shirt you could see a tag, like she had just purchased the shirt and she was probably going to be returning it afterward, because when you've been going to school and working in maybe community mental health jobs, you don't have a lot of money, and all these people are from behavioral health backgrounds. And so I felt bad that like this girl, she could barely afford to get there, and here she is in the shirt, and I could see the tag. I was like, already like feeling bad. And what really exacerbated that bad feeling was all 24 people out of the 30 that showed up did not know that there were only 12 slots for those 24 people. So half the people weren't going to get in. And that really horrified me. And I felt really good about my chances at the time. And it took me back to a trauma from childhood where I was in a church, and the church that I was in had elders and adults that went to the church that were very judgy about people who went to other churches and said that those other people are going to hell, either the secular people, but also the people who worship at the false churches. They're all going to hell, and we're the ones going to heaven. And even at like 7 years old, I felt that was really weird, that these people were so happy that we were all going to heaven, and that all these other people were going to be burning in the lake of fire for eternity, right? They weren't going to get into heaven. Now, flash forward more than 35 years, right? I'm in this situation where I know that half the people are going to get in and half the people aren't. And everybody there probably spent more money to be there than I did, because the gas money that I spent to drive there was probably nothing compared to the plane tickets that other people paid for. And so they probably had an additional night of stay at a hotel and all that. And if their practices were bigger than mine, because mine isn't full, I've been building mine since August of 2023. So like mine's only half full. If their practice was bigger than mine, then they have even more money that they were out for being there for the week. So it cost them a lot more. And since, outside of this point in the story, we know that I didn't get in. If I were to reapply to the same place and have the same procedure happen, instead of $1,000, I'd be out $3,000 for that week in order to attempt again. So I know that this cost everybody so much money and time out of their life to be there, and half the people are not going to get in, and we all show up feeling like it's going to be based on just our own effort. We're going to be in on our own merits or out on our own merits, whether or not our interview goes well. And then they drop the bomb on all of us in the beginning. Only half of you are getting in. And I can tell you that some of the people would not have gone if they knew this. Right? They definitely would not have flipped a coin on whether or not they were getting in. If they had known beforehand, if I had known beforehand, it would have been a different decision. I still probably would have gone because I felt good about my chances. But as it turns out, I would have been wrong. But anyways, the first day, I felt like it went better than I could have ever planned it. In the morning, I had group interviews where I was in a group, and there were 3 other people in that group, and we all made each other shine in this interview. It was really a cohesive, spontaneous group. But I felt good about everyone who was in that group. And there was one question in particular, which was pick out something that is a positive about somebody else in this group and how they've participated in this. And one girl decided to give me a compliment, and I gave her a compliment back, which left the other 2 people, right? And those other 2 people gave each other compliments. And so each person in that exercise got a compliment, and I felt really good about that. Not from a competitive standpoint, but from a bringing everybody up standpoint. I felt super good that we did not throw somebody under the bus by not giving them a compliment. And that's the way that most therapists would feel. Like, bring everybody up, don't leave anyone out, And so I felt really good about that morning. Then after lunch, I had an individual interview, which went as good as I possibly could have had it. I now know that some of the answers to the questions might have been not what they were looking for, but they were as honest as I could be. like saying that I intend to keep my practice treating veterans while going to school, and that both are important to me. Even though everybody pretty much has to work to get through school, right? Nobody can just go to school and not have a job unless they have a silver spoon in their mouth, right? But I feel like the way that I answered the question was great, and it was honest, but not what they were looking for. And I'll get to that in this video, but I know this is already a long video. So, we had an interview, like a group session with all 24 people, and the people who were currently in the PhD program, which was 10 years old at this point. Cohort number 10 and a member of cohort 9 were on a Zoom screen where we were all able to see them and they were able to see us. And we could ask questions of the current students. And one of the interviewees actually asked, well, how do you guys pay for like, how can you guys afford to go to school? And there was an uncomfortable pregnant pause that happened right then and there, as like eyes grew big, like none of them really could afford it. Like, they're all struggling. And one said that she had 3 jobs as well as going to school. So some of them are just going into student debt and just doing the program. And then there's a couple of slots that they had for like research assistantship or teaching assistants, which give a little stipend, but that's about it, right? People just go into debt to go to school. But it was interesting, that little part. And then we closed for the day one, and a bunch of us went to a place called the Purple Pig, which was a pub. And I had a really nice pulled pork sandwich and fries, and didn't drink because, I'm an addiction counselor, and, I'm at an interview process, so just had a soda. We all took pictures while we were there, and I would say less than half the people showed up to the Purple Pig that were interviewees. And I, of course, showed up because I thought, unity with each other and like bonding and whatnot. And if you were to look at the picture that we took of everyone at the table, hardly anyone that showed up for that dinner were the ones who were selected for this PhD program. And the most I could say of the filter of that dinner, and if you went to that dinner you were less likely to get in, is the place costed for me and my girlfriend, it was $50 for the food. And of course, if you're trying to pinch pennies to get to the interview in the first place, you can't afford $50 for food. So that's what I'm getting to in this whole theme of why I did not get selected for this program. This is part of it. So day 2, it started with a little breakfast get together where we were allowed to ask questions to the staff, and then we had some group interviews that were based on questions of the essay that we wrote and the gatekeeping article that we were supposed to read. And I'd refreshed myself with that article right before the breakfast in my car, just to, be as well prepared as I could for this this day. And in the group interviews, each of those topics had a different set of professors. And I felt like I did really well in answering the questions. And this group in particular, I had befriended a man named Alex, who, not for nothing, is a trans man. And counting Alex and myself, out of the 24 people, there were only 4 men. Right? The other 2 were David and Austin. It's really easy to know all the men's names when there's only 4 of them, right? So I had, in the little breakfast before we had our meeting in the morning, I had decided to try to talk to as many of the people who were going to be in my group beforehand, because we got this itinerary and we could see the list of names of the people who were in a group. So why not try to be more friendly with them right before, to have more of cohesion in the group. So I came prepared for this thing, and Alex and I had been talking, and so we really felt like bonded as co-interviewees, that we had a really good chance. Alex was going to stick with me, I was going to stick with Alex. And so in these interviews, I actually at one point said, well, branching off of what Alex just said, in order to give credit to what he was saying, but also, add to it, I threw that in there, like as a, looking out for somebody else and their chances, and so we had this strategy going into day 1 and day 2, but in day 2, the groups were not as small. We had 7 people in our group, and one of the people in my group actually had it out for me. And it's a strategy for interviewing in a group setting that I have never seen before, but she, at the same time as being wicked and manipulative, it was a good strategy. And if you're trying to get into a PhD program, which I now understand to be pretty hard to do, I really can't fault her, because maybe she's been to other interviews and got denied, and now she's just, really trying her hardest to get in. So what she did to me in this group interview was, every time I answered a question really well, she would follow up, as a fellow interviewee, she would follow up in this by saying, oh, but what are some of your weaknesses in that? Oh, but what are some of your challenges in that? Do you ever have any problems with that? And what she was doing was only directed towards me. She didn't ask anyone else in the group, right? And it really seemed targeted, and that she picked out the strongest candidate that she felt was most likely to get in. And at that point, I actually felt like one of the more strong, good chances to get in candidates. It backfired on her a little bit, in that I had really quick, good answers to what she was doing, and it didn't fluster me in the moment. As soon as we got out of those group interviews, I was pissed that somebody showed up to these interviews not wanting for everyone to get in, but actually looking to make somebody else look bad to make themselves look good. And her strategy was great, in that she wasn't insulting me. She was just giving me the opportunity to point out my own flaws, which as a strategy, mwah, chef's kiss. As far as manipulative, Machiavellian things to do in a group interview setting, I hope none of you look at this video and then use it like in a job interview or a school program interview, because it is mean, and I don't recommend it. But I can't say that I don't understand at this point. This lady was also one of the few minorities, and I'll speak to that now. You guys know, out of 24 people that showed up, 4 were men. That means 20 women, right? Out of the 20 women, 4 were minority. One was, I think, East Indian. One was African American, and 2 were Hispanic. And one has a last name that looks like she might be married to someone from Japan, but she's white. So, those were the demographics of the entire group. I left that second group interview. Then we went to this this final meeting with all of the instructors that were part of the PhD program. And they started saying things that didn't quite align with what we had read on the website when we applied for the program. One of which being this guy, this one professor who was male. He was saying that what they're looking for is somebody who is moldable, and not necessarily somebody who already thinks that they know everything, right? Which, wanting somebody who hasn't been hardened by the world of counseling and wanting somebody who is like fresh is completely different than wanting somebody with 2 years of experience at least and post-grad and a license, right? That time there that gives you that experience, that's different than what they're wanting. And he was also saying, if you don't get in, it's not the end of the world. It could mean that there's a better place for you out there. It could mean that you just need to apply again next year. Other people have done that and gotten in after the second time. And I'm just like, oof, I feel bad for whoever didn't get in. And it could have been, it could be me. Turns out it was. I did so much effort to try to get into this program. Starting from when I was in my master's program there, and I knew that I was probably going to apply there, and I worked hard to maintain a 4.0 while working full-time and going to school full-time. Okay? While I was there, I talked to the professors that I knew. I talked to professors that I didn't know. I wore my t-shirt from graduation that they hand out at graduation underneath this sweater, and I was flashing it. When people said, hey, do I know you? I flashed the t-shirt like, yep, I'm from here. I was pulling out all the stops. And as I drove home after day 2, stopped at the sand dunes, great sand dunes in Colorado, right? Had a moment there, and then the rest of the way home, I felt like there was no way I could have any better of an interview than what happened. I did my absolute best. Nothing could have gone better for me. And they told us that they would take until March 1st maybe to get the decisions out. But They didn't wait that long. It was actually just 2 weeks later. They came out with the decisions, and my decision letter said that I was declined. And then I learned that, because we all got onto this one group me chat, all of the people who were interviewees were invited by one particular girl who, by the way, also didn't get in, and was also at the Purple Pig dinner, where we all just decided to meet up afterwards, and half the people did. Yeah. And in this group chat, I learned who got in and who didn't. And for days we were making jokes about the anxiety of waiting and waiting and waiting. And I actually made the joke that we were Schrodinger's PhD candidates. You know, we're until we know we're both at the same time. We're in and we're out. You know. And then Alex was the first person to tell me that he didn't get in by texting me, and yeah, I got a new friend forever, by the way. But that's the most I got out of this experience, because after Alex texted me, I went and checked the website for admissions, and I got my decision letter for a decline. And I was just in a state of shock. Like, how the hell did I have the best interview I possibly could, had all of the preparation, had a 4.0 at the very same institution for my master's degree that I earned just 2.5 years earlier, and I have 2 licenses to practice, and all of the experience that they said that they were looking for on the website. How? So then I went to the GroupMe chat where people were posting whether they got in and not, and most people were posting that they did not. And which was strange, because I had previously postulated in that group chat that the people who chatted the most in the group chat might correlate to the people who got in, because they're more cohesive, and that might be what they are looking for, because that's what they said they were looking for, a more cohesive group. And we were all on minding our P's and Q's the entire time we were there, trying to be more cohesive. So the first thing that stood out to me was, after I posted that I didn't get in, I noticed that David and Alex didn't get in. And David, I thought, was actually more likely to be in the top 12 than the bottom 12. Alex had a one instructor in particular who was focused on LGBT studies, who sat down and talked with us. And I thought, if there was ever like a buzzer that a professor could hit to say, no, I need to save that one for me, that one's mine. You know, like in America's Got Talent, there's like the special golden buzzer. I felt like that one professor had Alex's back. And I knew so many professors there, I was like for sure that one of them would love to have me. And then Austin, honestly, I didn't see much of him in the interviews. We were not in the same groups, and we didn't sit at the same tables as much, so I didn't know much about him. But all 4 men, all of them, did not make it in. And when I posted that, the lady that had come at me in the group interviews by following up every answer I had with the question, oh, what was your challenges with that? What were your weaknesses with that? You know, and just kept on making all of my questions harder, but giving me more of an opportunity to shine. That lady, she responded with, ooh, ouch. She also did not get in. And she was, I'll say, at least mid-30s, and had a career in an HR style position. And I don't want to give out too much about people, you know, I'm not trying to dox anyone in this, but she didn't get in. And honestly, even though I didn't like what she did in the interview process, I felt that she was a strong candidate, you know. And then the person who set up the GroupMe chat, this young lady, went around offering to add every person in the entire group of interviewees, and she didn't get in. And she's the one who set up the group for us. So many of the notable people that I saw at this interview, this 2-day interview, did not make it in. The girl who had the tag that was visible under her shirt, she did get in. And I got a little warm fuzzy out of that because, you know, at least she didn't find it, you know, very expensive and fruitless as an endeavor to make it out there. So she was happy to get in. The girl who came at me in the interviews, she was also one of the minority women. So what I also noticed, after all 4 of the men didn't make it in, one of the minority women did for sure, and one of them didn't. And the other 2 have not responded as of I'm making this video. But at the very least, this program that I was very proud to have graduated from for my master's, they excluded all of the men, and at the very least, they accepted 9 white women, and at most 3 minority women. And yeah, of the men, I'm a veteran, and Alex is of the trans community. So there was diversity in there that was lost as well. So this place that actually gave us interviews like hours long as a group about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then about gatekeeping, decided to create a cohort of 100% women with only one, so much as I know, only one minority candidate. Could be 3. Could be. But 75% white women. The only minority status that they have in that case being that they're women. But right now, as you're watching this video, you people that are watching this video, I want you to plug in a zip code that you know of. It could be your own, it could be a major metro area. Go to Psychology Today, to their listings of therapists. Now they have psychologists, social workers, counselors, marriage and family therapists. They have all. They have a mix. Go ahead and put any zip code you want, and you can pick online or in person. Hit enter, and you will find that the listings on Psychology Today are basically a listing of here's a variety of white women to tell your problems to. they're not the minority, but in this case, it's really, really difficult to point it out that, like, something wrong just happened. If you had asked me to rank all of the people that should have gotten into the program that I met, and then rank the people that I thought weren't as good of candidates, it's as though they sent the invitations out to the wrong people. Like they flipped them. Every candidate that was not very loud, very mousy, just kind of floated in the background. I said I have 2 licenses and plenty of post-grad experience. They picked people who didn't have their licenses yet. Women that didn't have their licenses yet. And it ignored people that had... Now, I have 2.5 years post-grad experience and probably 10 years of experience overall with having various licensure levels. Alex had almost 2 decades of experience. David had a decade of experience. And I joked with Alex, I'll say this, that the lineup of the women that got in, if you were to just look at all their profile pictures on the GroupMe chat, either there's a predator of women that has the same tastes as Ted Bundy, which I don't think this is the case, but Ted Bundy's victims as a lineup look just like the women that were selected to get into this program. So, just saying, either there's selection based on that, young, mid-20s to mid-30s women, white. Either it's a case of that, or there's, the much more likely scenario that they were choosing candidates based on whether or not they were likely to go on to be full-time professors. And if you'll remember, in my individual interview, I did say that it was important for me to keep my practice going because I like giving back to the veterans community. And so, since I wanted to add a couple of courses being taught to my week and not be a full-time professor anywhere in my future, that's not what I want to do. I was likely answering not in the way that they wanted, because they actually chose people with almost no experience in the real world. And if I looked at all the people that didn't make it in, a lot of them went to the Purple Pig and could afford a $50 dinner for 2. A lot of them make money in the real world right now, right? And so I feel like they were selecting candidates based on who was most likely to be lureable into a future profession where you don't get paid that much, because these people have never had a taste of money. Because as soon as you have a taste of money, like I have, you're less likely to want to be a full-time professor. You'll want to do 1 or 2 courses a week, but you got to make your money, right? And you don't want to lose all of your hours of the week to just running classes, because it's not something that will pay the bills. And that's what it looks like they were selecting for, is do they think that you could make it in the world as somebody who will be a professor full time and not care about money? And if you looked successful in any way in your regular profession in your life, if you have gone out and gotten the experience and left community mental health, you are less likely to have been a candidate selected for their PhD program. Now, some of you are going to watch this video and think in a red pill sense, oh my goodness, Michael, you were wronged because you're a man, and this is even more proof that like wokeism is taking over. Blah, 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 blah. That might have been an initial thought that I had, but hear me out. Rather than landing in that red pill thought space that I really don't care to be in, I actually see this as a meta-feminist problem. Because this institution is selecting a certain age of white women who have never made money on their own in the real world, or you have a lot less experience in the real world. They're selecting these women to be professors and basically shackle them to low wages going forward. Right? And in my mind, it's actually kind of, it's preying on women more than it is helping women in that mindset. Because if they're selecting people who are moldable and don't have so much experience that they think that they know everything, that's what they're selecting for. They're selecting for women who maybe feel like they are the moms of the community and have to make themselves accessible and shouldn't be caring about how much money they make. You know, maybe they're going to get married to somebody who makes a lot of money. Maybe their parents will help them out. But they'll find a way. Maybe they'll move to a small town rather than live in the big city so that they can provide their services at a lesser cost to the world and accept that lower pay. So because those of us who didn't make it in were more successful, we were seen as less viable candidates, because what they want is people who will be full-time professors. The story's not over. So, when I was going through the master's program there, the director of the program was a guy we'll call Mark, because his name's Mark, but I'm not trying to like dox people here, but Mark stepped down from his position as director of the program. And he did so to take just a regular professor job. He didn't like the stress of running the whole program anymore. He's getting old, right? So you don't want as much stress in your life. And also, I know from back then, he told us that he was also happy that other people within the organization had a chance to step into that role. And so he wasn't like camping it. He wasn't going to be, dictator for life. He was going to give somebody else a chance. So 2 women ascended to these roles of a director and assistant director, like positions, right? And they found out that they were getting paid less than Mark, who was still a professor there. And because these are open court records, because they filed a discrimination case based on gender for wage discrimination, and they got a settlement out of it. These settlement papers are actually something that you can Google and find. And what they found was, while these two women were making like $67,000 and $57,000 respectively, Mark was making like $92,000. So, without any other context in the court case, this thing gets filed, and they said that while Mark was there, he had given certain people extra funds in order to keep them as professors and not others, and he had actually started a coffee shop called The Roast, which I actually enjoyed. I actually had a picture of myself holding that coffee cup as like my profile picture online for a while. Because I was very proud to be part of that program. So, the only reason why I found out about this court case was because in the group chat, one of the ladies who was selected for the PhD program, she actually in the group chat said that she has reservations because she looked up some stuff online. And she found this. And also, during our interview process, when they were all introducing themselves, Mark looked like he didn't want to be there. He was very soft-spoken. He did look like he didn't want to be in the room with the other professors. Like, it was obvious. He was off in the corner, just like didn't want to be there. It was weird. So, in the settlement, it was found that Mark was wrong, and both of these, a new director and new assistant director, who are both professors there as well, they now get extra pay, and they got like $30,000 or $40,000 back pay. Both their lawyers got like $55,000 in lawyer fees, and both their pays were adjusted to like $73,000 for like 2 years ago. And I'm looking at all of this information, and in the moment I'm thinking, well, hell, I make more money than Mark does. Like, this is weird. Like, why are we all fighting for this with people actually caring about whether or not somebody's going to be a full-time professor in the future, when we should have more part-time professors who have more real-world experience and people who are making money? Because at the $73,000 that both of these current people in charge of the program are making, I couldn't afford to live in Denver. Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to pay my bills, especially not with student loan debt. And they're probably getting paid way more than the other professors underneath them. Now, Mark had also been there longer at the school and probably had a lot of tenure. And also, I'm just going to say, many times people who are getting paid more negotiated better. And initial negotiations are important. But they won. These two ladies won. They won their settlement. And the one that is the assistant to the other of these two ladies that are now running the program, she is the one who signed my decision letter telling me that I was not allowed in the program. These ladies, after winning a case about gender-based discrimination in wages, went on to make a cohort for their PhD program with 100% women, using criteria that were not posted, and actually the opposite of what they posted, in order to make a cohort of all women who they want to mold into being professors. Right? Like full-time professors. But just the fact that they just won a case based on gender-based discrimination, and then they're blind to the way that they just made this entirely female cohort by excluding 4 really good candidates, 3 of which I thought had a really good chance. The other one I didn't really know much about. But like I said, if I had rated who I thought was getting in or not before leaving there, it would have correlated better to the opposite of what happened than any other measure. Like who's chatting the most in the group chat didn't really correlate well either. Who showed up to the dinner that we all decided to go to didn't really correlate well either. It's, one girl that showed up to the dinner, for sure she got in, but like, I was really stunned and more than depressed, just stunned that I did not get in. And to think that they said, we want people who are more moldable and don't think that they know everything. I got a 4.0 from these very same professors. Like, how much more moldable can I be if I'm getting A's from these professors? They're giving me the A's, letting me know that I did well in their classes. Moldable how? Well, moldable into you're more likely to take a low-paying job for the rest of your life. And as it all dawned on me, like, why people didn't get in, part of me is like remembering from childhood people saying that, I'd rather be in hell with the people that are fun than the stick in the muds that make it into heaven, But in this case, I'd rather be one of the more successful people who doesn't need this program in order to be a success in life. I feel like I'm in much better company. I've made some friends that are among that crowd, and whew, this has been a learning experience. I will not probably apply to the same program next year. I probably will be into a completely different program by that time rolling around, because this was only my first decision that was a no. And it'll probably take me a few no's to find a yes that I'm happy with. But I'm looking into other places. But also, as an addiction counselor, if one of my clients told me, yeah, I burned $1,000 by betting on a coin flip, and it didn't go my way, but next year I get to bet $3,000 on the same coin flip, and I have a better chance of getting in. After seeing who they picked this time around, while I felt like a really strong candidate when I left there, after I saw who they actually picked, I'm towards the bottom. I'm not what they want. And a second year of interviews is not going to change that. They're looking for people who are not me. I'm out there to make that bag. I'm making money. I'm adding teaching as, something that makes me feel good about me, and adding it as a feather in my cap. I don't really need, just as a way of giving back to the world. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to do that coin toss of a chance again, because I know too much about the program and what it wants out of the people just by the people that they selected. Yeah. there was talk of if somebody stepped down out of their position, that as like a wait list, that somebody might get offered a position that somebody else declines by a certain amount of time. And so the fact that they've excluded 4 men might not hold over, say, the next 2 months. After those 2 months, they will have already had the orientation on campus, and the cohort will be set at whatever amount of people they have. Anyone who drops out will, at that point, not be opening up a position for anyone else. But if it goes 2 months from now and those 4 men still have not gotten in, and they've gone ahead with a 100% female cohort with candidates who are men that are better candidates as per what they put out on their website, I will be filing a Title IX complaint against my alma mater for gender-based discrimination. And not because I am feeling bad about not getting in at this point. I'm excited for the ability to look at other programs. I find myself warming up to the idea of I don't have to be locked into the same place, you know. So it's not all sour grapes here, but hear me out. If I hear about child abuse, I don't weigh whether or not I feel like the child abuse that I heard about was bad enough to warrant me reporting. As soon as I hear about child abuse, I report it, right? As a mandatory reporter. It's part of my professional ethics. And what I have proof of is gender-based discrimination. And I don't have to weigh whether or not I feel bad about it in this moment. As a professional, just having seen it, I feel like it's my duty to report it. Now, I don't know that it'll hold in this situation, but if it does, I will report it. And I'm not contacting any of those professors telling them, oh, if you don't let a man in, you know, I'll do this. No, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm just saying if I see it happen professionally in my ethics, I know I have to report it. And this is not the position that I thought I would be in on the day that I left those interviews. I thought that I was a shoo-in to be in. I was so convinced of that. And yeah. Turns out it's just my first L of what will probably be a couple of L's more, you know, maybe a handful before I get into a program that I like, which seeing it within the lens of, you know, you gotta, you know, break a couple eggs to make an omelet, you know. Everybody who ends up being a success in life has plenty of failures behind them. So I'll be okay, right? But I definitely did not feel like I would be a person having to do this. And it's a very weird journey that I'm now on in that light. And yeah. Trust that you won't see me on any red pill networked or alt-right pipeline show talking about what happened to me as a man. because that meta feminist perspective of, oh my God, they're selecting women to mold into people who will agree to working for low wages to teach everybody else and make themselves more accessible to the world. That's actually more on my mind than the fact that four guys didn't make it in. The fifth one was actually, his name was Carl. He didn't show up. He was part of the 30 that was emailed. We lost Carl before he even showed up. Poor Carl. But, yeah. This was my first foray into applying to a PhD program. Hope you all enjoyed it.